starting the recording. So with this, I bid you welcome to this presentation of InterFormNG, our new platform-independent product. A short introduction and explanation what this product is all about. InterFormNG, NG for new generation, is a product that is Java-based, and with that it has been possible to actually make a product that's platform-independent. At the moment we're concentrating on the Windows platform, so we've made an installation wizard, for instance, for Windows platform, and we have customers running production already on that platform. We have also, however, made successful tests both on the IBM I and AIX, so that's definitely also to come. If we compare InterFormNG with the good old InterForm 400, one of the differences is that this product accepts XML files as input instead of spoof files. So InterFormNG monitors a directory, and whenever there's a new XML file, that will be picked up and converted, and this conversion can either be into some print, so output, so we can print out on printers that are PostScript compatible, PCL5, or ZPL compatible. ZPL for those label printers from Zebra. There are also other manufacturers making printers that are also ZPL compatible. But that is covering the data stream possibilities for printers. Alternatively, we can create PDF files and even emails with an attached PDF file, exactly as you know from InterForm 400. When you compare this product with InterForm 400, you will, or we have actually made this product much more flexible in behind the scenes. So if we should get a very special request from one of our business partners or even customers, then it's actually possible to adapt to a very specific specifications. So it's possible to change the product more dynamically compared to InterForm 400. Later on we will look into the design process, and when you compare the design elements here with InterForm 400, you may notice that they are completely different. And the reason mainly is that we have over 20 years of experience with InterForm 400, and it's always like that. During all of those years of development, we have sometimes made some design decisions that we perhaps would like to make over. So with this product we have the opportunity to make a new beginning. So we have chosen some different decisions about those elements, as you will see later. Another difference when you compare InterFormNG with InterForm 400 is that this product is actually able to run without a license code. So you can just download and install, and what you will get if you're running without a license code is that you will get this trial edition text in the upper left corner. No matter if you're creating PDF files or creating a printed output, you will have this extra text, noticing that you don't really have a license yet. Just to emphasize, this product is an alternative to InterForm 400. It's not a replacement. We're not talking about limited support or limited development of InterForm 400. That product is still being developed and supported. So just to emphasize that we are not leaving the support for the good old InterForm 400. It's just an alternative for those customers that are unfortunately leaving the good old stable platform of the IBM I. Yeah, so just a short explanation about how you actually install. If you have already installed an older version of InterFormNG, then you should just make sure that you stop a server connected with this product before you do an upgrade. Apart from that, an upgrade is a simple running an installation file wizard here, and then you just click next, next, and next, more or less. However, one of the screens here, you should perhaps take a little notice on one of these screens, but because you're asked where would you like to place your data to be used by InterFormNG. So this will be the path where the incoming images, where the XML files you use for your designs and so on, the fonts where they should be uploaded and so on. So it's like the pathway, the entry into InterFormNG. So it might be a good idea to select a simple path, and during the installation, as default, InterFormNG might suggest a longer path where the current user will normally place their data. So that's why you should take notice of this. After the initial installation here, you will also be asked if you want to install and start the server, and you should normally confirm that and say yes please, and just do that. Very simple installation. After you have installed the product, you actually have these four components of InterFormNG. You have this data directory that we configured during the installation, where all of the data is placed. You have a graphical designer. You have a web server that is used for configuration, especially for configuring this server. And this server is what we are doing using for doing these automatic merges. So it's very like the AutoForms control function in InterForm 400. So I will here go through each of these four components. Yeah, first of all, this data directory where we import the resources, that is of course set through the installation. If you regret and you want to move it to a different place, you can find the environment variable called InterFormNG _home, and then simply change that and copy the complete resources or move that to a different position. In here you will find an area for configuration and log files, and another area here with the resources that you're using for your design. The document directory here is the entry for the XML files. So those XML files you want to use for your designs, that's where they should be placed. The font directory is where you should place the two-type fonts that we support for the output. So you need at least one two-type font in this directory. This is as default, it comes with an empty directory, so you need to decide yourself which two-type fonts you would want to use and copy them over to this directory to make them available for InterFormNG. InterFormNG will need two-type fonts always, contrary to InterForm 400, where you can refer to these typefaces and don't download any soft fonts or anything like that. That is a bit different here. If you want to have some images, logos, then they should be available as JPEG images, and you upload them into this image directory where you can refer to them in your designs. And when I say designs, they're actually named differently here in InterFormNG compared to InterForm 400. In InterForm 400 you would name them overlays, these designs that you make. But here we're calling them templates. That's a new word to learn. Templates. So these templates are placed in this template directory, and you can even create subdirectories. So if you as a business partner want to group your templates, for instance, per customer, then you can have one directory inside of this per customer. The final directory here within resources is called translation. So you can have some translation tables to translate specific keys into various languages, so you can have a more dynamic language support, and printout can be made in different languages in a more flexible way. Yeah, but the main thing to remember here is that you need to upload those TrueType fonts yourself into the font directory here. Okay, moving on. Just checking something here. Yeah, the designer. There's a lot of new things, different ways of doing the design compared to InterForm 400. So we'll just briefly tell you about these elements, and I will go through them in details after this view. So in order to use resources like XML file or image and so on, you would need to import them in your template to make them available. For each and every design element, for instance, you have a text element to add some text, you have a line element, a frame, and so on. For all of these elements, you have something called style element. So that would be like a description of the element. So you can have a description, for instance, for the fonts. When you insert a text element in InterForm 400, you need each and every time to state what font number to use. It's different here. You can state a style, a text style, and that would be the font to use. So in the beginning of your design or your template, you state, for instance, I want to use Arial in this template, and then Arial is used all through your design without you needing to tell InterFormNG that over and over. You can add more styles to override what you previously defined. We have something called a page element. So whenever you want a new page in your output, you just add a page element, and the elements that should appear within that page should just be inserted inside of that page element. So it's a bit like a group. Another group is called fixed area. So that's like a, let's say, a physical area, a physical group. So we can group elements together, and if you want to reposition a lot of elements, then if all the elements are placed in one area, then it's just a matter of replacing or moving that area to a new position, and all of the elements inside are of course repositioned. So that makes it more flexible in the longer run to have a design with a fixed area. Everything in your design cannot be fixed, because normally you would have one or many detail lines, an unknown number. So you would need some way of making some text be fluently and flow over the output page. And for that we have this flow area element where you can add new lines and it just flow over the page, and whenever InterFormNG finds that there's no more room for any more lines, it will just automatically make a page break and make a new page for it. We have something called error styles. So you're telling InterFormNG if you want to ignore something, if you're trying to refer to a resource that doesn't exist, or you're trying to refer to a path in the XML file which doesn't exist, would you then want a real error, or would you just ignore such a problem? In InterForm 400 we have sub-overlays, where you can define a header and a footer, for instance, once, and refer to that common those common definitions over and over again. And we can do exactly the same here by exporting a group of elements in a template, and then import that group in another template. One of my favorites when we compare InterFormNG with InterForm 400 is that we can now do calculations. So we have support for the language XPath. So if you Google this, you can find examples on the web and a complete description of this language. But it has a lot of functions, built-in functions, so you can, for instance, do substringing, or you can concatenate strings. There's a lot of numeric functions as well, so you can do multiply, divide, add and subtract and so on. So it's a very good language, and also the language that we use for referring to XML file contents. Remember, however, for the X part, that the built-in commands, they are case sensitive, so they are normally lowercase. Just remember that. For these calculations, it might come in handy to use variables, so you can define variables as well. For instance, sum up some amounts for each page and then print a page total in the bottom, and I'll show you an example of how to do that. We have also something called named offsets, so it's like positions in the output that we give a name, so we can refer to that fixed position and even move that offset dynamically, and I'll show you an example of that. Yeah, we have some loop functions here. So if you know for sure that you are going to repeat a number of elements a specific number of times, you can do a repeat. If you want to have a loop that runs over a specific number or a node or path in the XML file, so you're covering all detail lines, for instance, then you should use the for each loop, so that would cover all of those branches in the XML file. And finally, we have an if function. If something is true, then do whatever, execute or include some elements. Yeah. I mentioned the translation tables earlier on, that we have a way to insert some files with a key field, and then that is available for several languages. So you could say that if a customer wants something in their language, then you perhaps can find a language code in the XML file and use that to select the right translation table. And finally, we have something called a revision log for those installations where you are editing, or many persons are editing the same array of templates. So you can tell your colleagues what changes you have done. So it's also perhaps a very good idea for your own use to document whatever changes you do, so it's easier when you come back to a template you made a long time ago to actually find out what was made and when and why. Yeah, so that was a long talk, initial description, overview of InterFormNG. Now I would like to be a bit more concrete. And for me personally, each time I want to learn a new programming language, or in this case learn a new graphical designer, I start out with a task. Hello world. I want to have a simple setup where I'm able to create this hello world output. So let's leave the presentation a little bit and go into the graphical design here. This will start up and look for resources and so on in the beginning, so that's why it's taking just 5 or 10 seconds here to start up. Here we go. So it opens up a new blank template here, so I can start out making my design. I mentioned this import possibility where I can refer to these external elements, and I have, for instance, here a way to import an XML document. So normally I would build my template and refer to an XML file for this design process. So for that, I want to import or refer to such an XML file. So I click top here, and now the appearance here, it changes, and only this icon here is available. So I click this one, and I can refer to the XML document, and it will look into the directory specified earlier on. So you can see that is exactly where I'm at here in the document directory. I want to select a spoof file here for my design. Sorry, spoof file, XML file, and here we go. As usual here, when I refer or import some resource, then these resources are unfortunately not immediately available for my design. I need to save my design on my template, save it, close it, and reopen it, unfortunately. So that is what I would like to do now. I'm just saying save, call it demo 2 for instance, close and reopen demo 2, and here we go. So now you can see the XML file up here, and you can see the result of my design down here. That is how I would normally make my design, exactly like in InterForm 400. Right now I'm concentrating on this hello world, so I'm not really using my XML file for anything. So I think I would just like to maximize the result view so you can see this window better. Okay, so I have this import folder and I have the elements folder, and that is where I place my elements for my design that you can see right here. Yeah, I'm about to add this hello world with a text element, but before I can do that I need to tell InterFormNG the font that I would like to use, and that's done through this text style. You can see this little S in the bottom here. That's how we denote these styles. So here, when I do a drop down, I can see the TrueType fonts that I have uploaded into my font directory. So I select Arial, because that's the font I would like to use here. And I select the font size, like this. That's it. As many of the other attributes down here, you can see this onset value, and it simply means that whatever was defined previously is still the same. So this would be an Arial, and the default value here would be normal, an Arial normal. If I want to override that, I can add a new style to say now I want suddenly to have some bold text. Now I can add a text style which is bold, and leave the family here unset, so it simply refers to whatever was defined earlier. So even though I go between some are bold and italic and so on, I can still refer to what I defined here in the beginning. So it makes it very flexible and easy if someone later would decide to change the font used, then you could just refer to the first text style, saying, well, now we go with Times New Roman, whatever is decided instead. I'll just delete this one. Yeah, and yeah. So now we would like to insert this text element, but before we can do that, we will need a page element. So it needs to be inserted inside a page, and before we can add a page, it's a very good idea to add a page style, so it's clear to anyone what size would that page be, because we can set that here. Standard size A4. That would actually be the default size, but it's better to be specific here so everyone knows this is an A4. Okay, adding a page element. And now you see suddenly something happens here in the result view. Until now, all the things I've done was unprintable. It has nothing to do with the actual output, just preparing. But now finally with the page, we have a real printable area here, and this is where we can place our output. So this is where our text goes. So click the text element and say hello world. It's not visible unless you look very carefully here in the top. The reason is that the point of reference for these text elements, it's the lower left corner, exactly like it is with InterForm 400. That would be the default reference. In the text style here, you can also choose to have it's centered or right adjusted and everything like you can do with InterForm 400. And even for the vertical direction, you can have the reference to be the top or the center of these text instead. So it's even more advanced compared to InterForm 400. This, of course, is outside the printable area, so I need to move it in. So I think I would like to change this so it's actually visible in the final output. When I'm adding elements here, it might be a little bit difficult to see exactly what is happening. So as usual, it's a good idea to document the things you're doing, and you can actually add a description to each of these elements. And that is done here through description. So I could say hello world. Now it's more clear that that is exactly what's happening here. Yeah. Yes. So I've added this text, and yeah, perhaps I would like to make it a bit more nice with a frame around it. In order to add a frame, I have this box. Actually, it's called a box element. But before I add a box element, I also need to tell some attributes of these lines and boxes. So it's called a geometry style element. So again, I move up to the beginning and add my new style here. And it's just my recommendation that you add these styles here in the beginning, because then they're easier to find instead of messing around and suddenly in the middle of your design changing them. So it's just my suggestion. And here for the actual positions, and I actually forgot to mention that here for the text, these positions and width and everything, at the moment I'm making my design in centimeters, and you can decide that exactly like in InterForm 400 between centimeters, inches and pels. It's still converted into inches and pels in the background, so you might see a little bit of rounding off when you have saved something and reopen it, and then you may notice that some of these values, they change a little bit on the last digit. But that's the reason why. Okay, just going back here to my geometry style. Let's see, for instance, I want a width of my line like so, and adding my box. Say for instance 1 centimeter in the top here, and 3 centimeters down, and I don't know, not 60 but 6 centimeters wide. Okay. As you can see, we don't have a drag and drop yet. We're working towards that goal, of course, but what we have right now is that you can click here in the output, in the result, and then it's the equivalent element over here is marked. So if you find something that you want to change, it's just a matter of clicking here, and then it's highlighted, and you can change the attributes of that element directly here. Yeah, so now I could make my complete design here, just adding new elements. But this is not a very good way of making your design, because if you imagine that you would like these two components here, these two elements, to be moved to a different position, then you would need to move each of these. So it would be better to group them together. And for grouping, we have this fixed area here. So the fixed area, I added this element, and if I place some elements inside of the fixed area, then they are grouped. So that is what I would like to do now, holding now Control key, doing a cut and paste. Yeah, it didn't make much of a difference here in the output, but if we refer to this fixed area, this also has a position. So now I can reposition this to say, well, it should be 2 down and 4 centimeters in. So that position of the fixed area is there, and the elements inside, they are positioned relative to that point. So that's why they are moving along when I move the fixed area here. I think I would actually like to move it even further. Yeah. So it was kind of a success here. We were actually able to make our hello world and a frame, group them, and as I mentioned, you need sometimes to close and reopen the template to see those and use those imported resources. Yeah, that was the fixed area. We also have this flow area for the detail lines. I would like to show you here how that can be used. So let's forget a bit about this fixed area and add a flow area instead. Clicking here. So what does it mean when I add elements in the flow area? Well, now I'm leaving the responsibility to where the individual elements are placed. I leave that on to the designer. So let me just add a few text in here. So I say test 1. Yeah, obviously the position of my flow area is 0.0, so it's outside the printable area. Let's just move it in. So it's now inside the printable area. So I have the text 1 here, and adding a new text. Well, it will simply print the next element here to the right of the previous one. So just adding elements on the right. I can change the vertical position here if I want. That will have no effect on the following elements. We have a different way of changing the vertical positions. I'll show you later. If we do a horizontal displacement, then it will reposition the following elements as well. So if I move it 2 centimeters, this one will also move along, and I can of course also move this one, and that will be relative to this position. So that is 2 centimeters wide, this gap here. So I could just keep on adding text and it will move to the right each time. I would like to show you not just like a handful of detail lines, but just a lot. So that's why I would like to delete these 2 texts now and have a loop here, a repeat that inserts 100 lines. So I go for one of the loops. So this is the one, repeat. And here I simply can state how many times do I want to execute the elements inside of this repeat. This could be a constant, which I'm doing here, or you could calculate it and whatever and do it from a variable and so on. So very advanced. But let's just go with a fixed number of 100. We want to have 100 lines. So I'm adding a text called test. And they are unfortunately added to the right of the previous one. So you can see it's a long list of tests, but it's unfortunately going horizontally. But we want them to be moved down, so we're creating new lines for each one. And for that, we have this element here, new line element. So that is something that is working only with the flow area. So notice the change in the result view when I click here. Ta-da! 2 things happened. First of all of these tests, they are now positioned below the previous one. And the height of this is depending on the font size. So if I change the size here in the text style, this would actually just be higher to fit the current height of these texts. So that is quite dynamic. If you want to insert your own height, then you can go back to the flow area and here set a specific line height to see this is the distance between each of these lines. So that would override this default line height that would be calculated by InterFormNG. So that is one of the things that's happening when we're doing these 100 tests. Another thing is that, well, we started out actually with 1 page of output here. But now we have 2 pages. So it has automatically found out, well, there's no more room. So it has issued an automatic page break because of this flow area that's able to do that. So that's why we have a second page here. So we have the majority on the first page and whatever is left on the second one. This list here, you might want to have a, instead of just ending here with the page, you would perhaps want to reserve a little space for a footer. So you can go back here to the flow area into styles, and then you have a bottom that you can set up to have a distance from the bottom. So say, for instance, we want to reserve 2 centimeters for a footer. So that now cause the text to start or to end a bit higher. And we can of course also in the flow area decide to go lower. So if I change the top to 5 centimeters, it would be lower. But that would be like a fixed height. If you imagine a situation where you have, for instance, an invoice, and the first page of the invoice includes quite a lot of text, some data around who the customer is and so on, then you might the detail lines to start further below, and then on the second page you would like it to start very high on the page. How can you do that? Well, for that you need this offset element. So you can name a position in the output and say, this is my reference, this is my point that I'm naming. So first of all, let me define such an offset. So I could say this would be a name, and I can come up with this name, just name it as I please. I call it flow top, and say, well, I want to start 5 centimeters from the top on the first page. So, and perhaps 1 centimeters to the right. So I can say flow top here, just a description for my own use, equal to 5 centimeters. So in here, for the flow area, instead of having a fixed value for the position, I can use an offset variable. So say flow top, and now you can see suddenly it goes down to 5 centimeters. So that would now be 5 centimeters not only on the first but the following pages. But if you want this to change, then you can just change this offset as soon as you're getting into the flow area, because then you have used this value and now you can change it to a different value. So if this would issue a new page, then the new value of the offset would be used. So now I can update, change the same offset variable, or whatever we should call it. Actually it's called an offset only. So the flow top could then be 1 centimeter and 1 centimeter for the other pages. So you may notice now, instead of the 3 pages, we now have 2 pages again. So starting low on the first page and starting high on the second page. That's how you do that. Yeah. That was a bit about the new line, setting margins. Oh yeah, we talked about selecting the elements in the result view. But this, of course, is also a quite important part of this session, that you want, of course, to use the elements from your XML document in your output. So until now we have just talked about these fixed text and so on, but of course the whole purpose of this designer is to take an XML file and include that in the final output. Let me just zoom in here on the result here. Yeah, so that's the bottom of the second page. Yeah, so now I want to insert some text, some data from the XML file, and I want, yeah, first of all, if you look at this XML file, if you have been working with InterForm 400, you might be sitting there smiling, because this is the normal InterForm 400 demo spoof file that has been converted into XML using the XML conversion in InterForm 400. In this document here, on this XML file, I have actually 3 documents, and inside of each of those documents I have a document number, and I would like actually to list that. So first of all, I need like a loop handling all documents, and then within each document I want to refer to the document number to start out with. And I would like that to be placed in this flow area after the last of these text here. So in order to do that, I simply place my text or my new elements within that same flow area. So instead of the repeat, we have this for each possibility here. So this is a way to scan the XML file, and what I can do is that I can now in XPath write the complete path to this document, or, which is faster of course, just click the position in the XML file and clicking here select, and that will have now retrieved the path in the XML file. So it will now do a loop here and execute these elements for each document that is found in this XML file. And for each of those I want to find the document number. So I just add a text element, and this text element, earlier you saw we could add a text constant, but we can also add some information that we retrieve from the XML file, and that is done through the language XPath. So you can combine both information from the XML file with a formula to totally rearrange the characters or do calculations as you please. So here with the XPath, I want to retrieve that document number and simply say select. And here that path for the document number is the relative one, because InterFormNG know that I'm within a for each loop, so it will only refer to the relative path from document and inside. So that's why it's so short here. You may notice here that of course they are placed in the same line because I don't have a new line in between. So I just need to add a new line because we're still in the flow area, and there's actually not room for it. You can see there's an overflow for a third page. So let me just change my flow area here, because I actually want to keep that. So I just changed the bottom margin to 1 centimeter. Now I have them all here. It's just easier for you to see when I do this. Okay, so that's how I can make those detail lines to present them in my output. But perhaps I want more. You want a description, an amount, and so on. So in this case, let's take the company name and the contact person, and I add a new text element. Say we want to have this company, yes, and I want another one. I want the contact person, select, yes. We're still inside of the flow area, so you may notice that we are making the same kind of flow from left to right. I could of course reposition these if I would like some nice columns, because that would be what you would normally want, that these should be right below each other. So I could add a centimeter, but that centimeter is still relative to where the previous one ended. So I need a way to make nice columns. And the way that you do that is normally to make a fixed area, because then of course you have total control of where each of these elements are placed. So if I just insert a fixed area here and select these 3 elements, cut and paste, it looks quite messy now because they are all positioned in here in the beginning, so I just need to reposition the other ones here, so we could say in the left 4 centimeters, and this one could be, I don't know, 9. And of course, if you had some text here that should be right aligned, you can just use a text style to say whatever comes next should be right aligned. So that's how you would normally build up detail lines. Yeah. So that was a bit of an explanation about this fixed area in a flow area to have columns. Yeah. Page breaks. I did show you already that one way of creating page breaks, but actually you can make your own pages. Instead of letting the flow decide, you can also simply add, if you add another page element, you can see now I have 3 pages of output, and if I add a text, page 3, just for fun here, you can look at page 3. I know it's above the page, but it's still there. So I've just made an extra page just by adding a page element and whatever contents I like. So that's how you can force a page break or let the flow create them. I'm just deleting this again. Yeah. Yeah. Page statics. That's something that I didn't tell you. What you have seen here in this output is all the things that are executed outside this statics folder. If I open this, you will find a pre and a post folder. So these could contain elements that you would want to execute prior to everything that's outside the statics, and things that should be executed after these detail lines. I would normally suggest as an idea, you're not forced to, but it might be a good idea to place your header information, things that you would want to include on every page, of course, in the pre, and mainly those things that go above the detail lines, and post, I would normally insert the things that go after the detail lines, like a footer. But actually, if it's like a fixed footer and a header, you could put them in both in the same spot normally. But if you would like, for instance, to make a page total, where you sum up a lot of amounts on each page and print out a page total, then that sum, or that should be printed out here in the post, because then you have just went through those detail lines. I would like to show you here how that could be done. So we have this loop here with 100 tests. So I just want to calculate and find out exactly how many of these lines were there room for on the first page, and print that number here. So to do that, I need to define a variable that keeps increasing by 1 for each line. So I go up here in the top here. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where, but in the beginning, normally I would define here a variable. So I can define the variable here as count, and the type would be a number, because I want this to add to be added numerically. So I said, well, the detail lines when I start out is 0. And the description, as usual, is a very good idea. Count equals 0. And now for the repeat loop here, I want to add 1 each time there was room for a text line. So it's very important that I add 1 to that counter at this stage, because I don't really know exactly when that InterFormNG decides for a new page. So that's quite dynamic. But I know that if there's room for this text, then there's also room to add 1 to my variable, because that has no physical, it takes up no physical space here, so that would not cause a page break. So that's why I would add it after that text. So here we define the variable with this, and here we can change the contents or update that variable. So I want to update the count variable, and I want to make a formula adding 1 to my variable. So that's why when we're talking formulas, XPath is the way to go. Now I would like to type an expression down here where the variable is referred. So I need to refer to this variable, and we do that in a very special way, like so. So this is how we refer to a variable, because this whole formula could also have some XPath references to the XML file and so on. So we need a way to make it very precisely that this is a variable. So this will be substituted when I activate this, and this will actually be default activated in future versions, so you won't even see this opportunity here. It will just be substituted as default. So here I want to add 1 to my counter. So the previous value is substituted with this, and then we're adding 1 and moving that into count. So for my description, I would say count equals count plus 1. So now I've made everything for my totals. The total is updated. I just now need to actually print it out, and I would do that in the post, adding a text. Say, well, I want this to be my variable count. I would like to print that out in the bottom here, so 28 centimeters from the top, like 6 centimeters in. So I now know that there was room for 49 lines on the first page, and in total I have 100, because I didn't reset it, the counter, when I changed the page, so it's just updated, and it's like a total. If you had amounts for each of the details that you are adding up, then you have the complete total here on the last page. So that's a couple of ways, actually 3 ways you have seen already, where you can use this text element to insert some text from different origins. The fourth opportunity here is the function. So let's see what that can do. Well, we have actually only one predefined function, but that is the current page number. So we have a predefined function which should be typed exactly like this. So with that I can now also include the page number. So this is page 2, and this of course is page 1. Yeah, exactly. So we covered those issues here. Moving on. Yeah. So what I've done now is that I've gradually built onto this simple template, and I have of course also made some other examples. I have made a huge one here that I would show you some details for that. So let's just save this one, close it, and open my other template here. So this template is using more or less everything that you can do. In the bottom here you will see a footer, and that footer has been defined in another template. So in order to include that, I have done here in my template, I've done an import referred to the other template with my footer. In this other template I have exported an area of elements, and that is something you can do here with this group element. So we have also done it in this one to say we're just grouping, actually in this case everything, and that is available for other templates to import and use if they want. So that's how we can make a group of elements accessible for other templates and reuse same definitions over and over again. So here I have made an import, and then I need to refer to that actually included in my output, and that's done inside of my page element. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. So here inside of the statics I have an include, and that include is this element, include element. So I've included the other template, and that template has offered only this group for export. So it could have more than one group of elements in this other template, but only one, and that is causing that line and that text to be included in my output here. Translation tables, that's important. Moving up. This output here should look quite familiar as well. This is like a normal demo setup with InterForm. If you go through the training material in the manual, what you see here are some headlines for those detail lines, and they are currently in German, and that is actually selected dynamically based on this field in the XML file. So instead of having text constants, we can refer to this translation table. Let me just show you here these translation tables and how they're actually built up. Go resources translation. So I have here a very fixed way of naming these templates. I have like a root template which is the default one that I refer to in my import, and that consists of a number of keys and the equivalent value. So if I do a look up in this one and looking up with this key, then I will get this text. The key here can be only one word, so no space is allowed in this key, but the text that you get back can be longer. It can have longer spaces. You even have a longer text here, so that can return quite a long text instead of just one word. So that would be the default translation table to use. Then on that I have added some other translation tables for each language, and it must be stated exactly like this. For instance, I have the German one here, so if I find it's a German one, I refer to this one. And of course I have the English one here as well for Great Britain, so it's the British English. So how do I select between these? Well, it's done like this, that I have an if. So that would be this element here, insert if element. If, and we have a comparison, so we have a left and right side of our comparison. If they are equal, so I could say greater than, not equal, and so on. If they are equal, and what do I compare? Well, I compare the language. So in this case it's DE. I compare that with EN in this case. If it's EN, which is at the moment is not true, then I'm selecting here a local style. And this local style is this one. So with this one I can select between many different languages. So I've chosen here in this case to say, then I want to select English. And of course for the German ones, if I find a DE, I select the German. Just to prove to you that it actually works in this dynamic way, I could just change my import up here. Instead of the German, I can select the English one. And you see straight away these texts are actually now in English instead. So on the fly, and I'm referring to this one now, so on the fly it will change the language, so it could be the language that you would want. Yeah. Okay. So that more or less covers the normal design, but you want also, of course, this output to go somewhere finally. During the design you can actually do a preview here, so you can click on this one and verify if what you have now, how would that actually look if you created a PDF file. And here you can see this trial edition NAG that comes without, if you don't have a license code. But also you would want in this template here to select what kind of output would you like. Because as mentioned, you can print, you can create PDF files, or email this output. So how can you tell InterFormNG what you want to do? Well, that is set through something called metadata. So we can add such a metadata element, and you have a value, a key, metadata key, and you can give that a value. Let me just delete that one again. So one of these keys is called media type. It should be typed exactly as I have it here. Media type, that would be the kind of output that you would want. And the value we set here could be either print, archive, or email, all of them in lower characters. Lowercase. So here, instead of having a constant, I'm actually selecting that from the XML file. So in this case, my XML file is telling me, well, it should be archived, indicating that we want to create a PDF file. So that is what we retrieve with this XPath expression, that we grab that field from the XML file. So in that way we have told which one of the output types we want. You can see here I have a group up here for each of them. It's just making it more easier for you to see how what goes where and what we do in the different opportunities here. If we choose to print, then we need to tell which printer would we like to print on. And instead of selecting the exact printer in our templates, then we can return a document type. So we have this other metadata here. The advantage by returning a document type instead of a specific printer is that if in future you would want to direct this output to a different printer, then you would need to go into each and every template and change it. So instead of doing that, you can in the configuration of your server link the document type, the various document types, with a specific printer. So this document type here is also something that I have found in my XML file. It could be something that is unique, so you would need perhaps a condition to say if you find this and that in the XML file, then it's this and that type. This was just to make my own life easier here, so I have something to show you. So that's for printing, how we select a printer. If we would want to email, then we have equivalent metadata types, as you can see here. For the template, we have an RTF file containing the actual contents of that email, the attachment, what should that be, the subject of the email, and so on, the name of the receiver and who is sending and who is receiving, and so on. All of that you can specify with these metadata. And that goes as well for the archive here when we are creating a PDF file. For the creation of the PDF file here, I just changed it a little bit to make it a little bit more advanced. So here I have defined a variable that retrieves or translates the key invoice in my translation table. So that would return when we consider English or German, either the text invoice or Rechnung, as it's called in German. So we can name the PDF file something that depends on what we have found in the PDF in the XML file, and even done a translation first. So that is this variable invoice text is now either invoice or Rechnung, and now have added even a second variable here, and that actually wasn't really necessary, but I just wanted to break up this calculation in two. So here we are doing a concatenate, so meaning take that variable, which is either Rechnung or invoice, take that text, that variable, concatenate that with the document number from our XML file, which will be 1004, and concatenate that with the extension .pdf. So now I've built up the complete file name with my own formula. And that variable or file name is now used in another metadata key which defines the output file name. For the actual output directory, I can also make all sorts of calculations and so on. In this case, I have just set a path that's called /invoices or /invoices, sorry, and that is concatenated with a root directory that is defined in our server, and I will show you later how that is defined. Yeah. Now moving back to my template here. Yeah. Oh yeah. Revision log. I mentioned earlier on that you can have this revision log so you have a log of who made what to this template and when and why. So on each template you can have this setting, say use revision log. You can also generally have a setting here to force revision log whenever you create a new template. So it's something that is stored in the template, that for this template we're using revision log. And now if I save, I'm prompted here for a revision log, and each time InterFormNG will add a number to the last digit here. You can of course change that and write your own number standard if you want to name it something else. Just available as a help. This is just a save. That won't help my colleagues much, but it's kind of description. Saving that, and I can close that. And I can also view the revision log instead of just adding new entries, just verifying here who made what and when. So that is stored in that template as well, available for my colleagues. Yeah. Moving on. Yeah. We have a web server here for configuring the server. So let's move on and take a look at that one. So moving forward here, InterFormNG web admin. So I can log on to this web administration, user, admin, and password. Password that will give you full access, full authority to change anything here you want here. So, and I'll just maximize this. So this web interface here, you can configure the server. So starting from the beginning here, for the licensing, you can see if it's actually licensed. This is a trial one, so I don't have a license key. If I would like to order a permanent license, I would need to copy this into an email and send that with the order. And then if we receive that information, we will have enough information to be able to generate a license code for you. We have some general settings here. The main interesting ones are the default template here and the polling interval. So this will just mean how many seconds there are between the polling. So it will, with 10 seconds interval, the default is 5. It will check directory if there's a new XML file for this server. And if there is an XML file, it will merge it with this template. So this will be the entry template. So it will always use this template for the initial merge. So that template needs to branch out and include the right template that fits the XML file in question. So I would just like to show you here how that looks. So here I've made my entry template. I have an error style, which is this one, and this error style is set up so it ignores any invalid XPath. So if I have an XPath expression that refer to some node in the XML document which doesn't exist, then I won't get an error because I've just told it to ignore that kind of error. So here I can branch out. So I've actually done it like this to say if it says invoice in my XML document, then I'm actually including my template called invoice, and if it says order confirmation, then I'm including that one, and so on. So I have different overlays depending on, sorry, not overlays, but templates, different templates depending on the type that I find in my XML file. Yeah, so I close this and say, yeah, there's some log settings, whether how much you want to log. In this case, I have set it only to log any errors, but you can do log all or even disable logging. Yeah, for this transformation, if you want to preview, if you're making a template for ZPL, then you can even select specify a physical printer, and this printer should be a printer that is not used in any production because it won't be able to print at the same time. But here we can download the data stream into the printer and then load back an image of what the printer would actually print out. So you can get an exact preview of what the printer would print without printing anything. So that is a good way of saving resources on that physical printer. Yeah, so moving on here to the input configurations, file system, that is the input. So if we want to monitor a directory, yes please, and which directory, what do you want to monitor for new XML files? This is this one. This is the XML inbox. Let me just show you here, and this is the one. So if a new XML file should arrive here, the server, if it started, will pick it up, and during the processing it will rename it to XML-processing, and then when it's done it will add this as well, -processed. So now it's done. If there was a problem, a bug, an error, it will say -error instead. So you could look into the error log, the log files, and see what was actually the problem. Perhaps there's some missing resources or something like that. Yeah, closing. Yeah, for the output configuration, we have, as mentioned, these opportunities, and I didn't mention it, but in the template, when you set up this media type, you can even add more of them. So you can have email, comma, archive, comma, print. Then it would print email and archive the complete result. Instead of just doing one thing, you can make it do everything. Or do two, of course, that's also possible. Just delimit those with a comma. So here for the printer configuration, you can add a printer here. It's a printer that's installed on this PC. After you have done that, you need to tell InterFormNG what type of data stream is allowed, or what is would this printer understand. So it could be either ZPL, PCL, or PostScript. The resolution on that printer is also here. Of course, you need to set that up as well. So after setting up these printers, you can also link them with the document type, as I mentioned in the template design. So if we move on here to documents, you have here a list of these document types. So here the document type invoice, I just clicked on this, is linked with this printer. So it means that if I choose to print, then it would print on this specific printer. If I, instead of having these specific documents, have a single document type called asterisk, then that is like the default value, and it will just grab any document type, no matter what it is. So if you have only a single printer in an installation, then you don't need to worry about these document types, and you can just have the default one and link that with the specific printer you would want to use. Yeah, moving on to the archive configuration. Yeah, we have a default PDF file name, which of course we could override in the template. This is like the root of the path. So as you might remember, I had /invoices stated in the path, so that would be concatenated with this path. So inside of the temp directory, I have a directory called invoices, and here I can enable or disable this kind of output. So this is currently enabled. And finally, email configuration. The top two ones set up the default subject and default template to use the RTF file containing the contents of the email, and we need to sign on to a mail server. So I have all of these specifications for the mail server as well. If you have made some changes, you might want to actually apply them. This might not be enough, so usually I would suggest to actually restart the server job in order to do that. But I'll show you here how to go along with that. So moving on, this server job, that is, yeah, very much like auto forms control in InterForm 400. That's the job that does the hard work. So you can, if you have made some changes in your configuration, you should probably stop and start that server, and you can do that here through InterFormNG service stop and start. But you can also go into control panel and do the same. So like this, administrative tools, services, and you have here InterFormNG. So here you could stop it and start it, or even just restart it. And this starting or stopping this service would actually not only start and restart the server doing the merges, but also the web server. So if you say restart, you need to be prepared to wait a little bit before the web server comes up again. It can take a couple of minutes before the web server is started up again. So just have a little patience when you do this. In the future, in the foreseeable future, these two servers will be divided. So we have a specific server for the auto forms control for the merging, and another server for the web server. So you can start them individually. Yeah. Moving back here. Oh yeah, very important. Note that when you install InterFormNG and then when you sign on to your PC, then this server job will run under your user profile. But it might be that someone else, another user on this machine, has installed some printers that you want to use in your server. So instead you can run with the authority of the administrator. So if you right-click on this service, you can choose to log on as administrator when this server is running. So in that way you can give the server job full authority. Yeah. Yes, that was actually the long story that I wanted to tell you. You will get an email later on with these links, but here just for information, we have a link for this version of InterFormNG that I've just shown you that is available on our download site already. We have a manual. The manual refers to the graphics of the manual is not 100% correct because there have been some minor cosmetic changes here in the few last days, but it's still definitely usable. This presentation here that I've just shown you is also available on our download site. But as I mentioned, you will get an email with that, and you will also get a link to one of these recorded sessions.